Today's scripture reading brings us to 1 Samuel chapter 29, getting down to the end of this book and the end of King Saul's reign. And in chapter 29, it's only 11 verses. We don't have a lot of ground to cover here. I have it divided into two sections, and that is verses 1 through 5. I have that titled, David Marches with the Philistines, but is rejected by their princes. Now, if you recall, David, after the second encounter with Saul there, he fled unto Achish, and they gave him, after David went there, they gave him a place there in Ziklag, and David was there for, I think, 1 year and 4 months, if my memory serves. David had pretended to raid his own countrymen, the Israelites, from Ziklag, and told Achish that, in fact, he was raiding and fighting against the Gershites and the Gemarites and the Amorites. If memory serves, I'm going completely on memory, and that's never good for me. But he's fighting against the Philistines' friends, but he's telling Achish that he's fighting his own countrymen. So he's got Achish believing all this stuff, and that's important because of what we see. What we're going to see here in this passage of Scripture, because David has Achish completely fooled. The Philistines are getting ready to go to battle against the Israelites, and Achish is like, "Come on, David, now you're going. It's time. You said you're going to go." And David gets in line, him and his 600 men, and they're going with the Philistines. They're bringing up the rear, but when the rest of the Philistines see this, they say, "Wait a minute, what is this Hebrew coming with us for? What are you thinking?" And Achish said there, he said, he's been with me these days or these years, and I have found no fault in him since he fell unto me unto this day. He's got complete faith in David. Now, I want you to go back, and let's go back real quick to the beginning of chapter 28. I want to show you something. And he says this, David said unto Achish, verse number 2, "Surely thou shalt know what thy servant can do." And Achish said, "Therefore I'll make thee keeper of mine head forever." David was very ambiguous. Achish is like, "You're going to fight one day," and he says, "You're surely going to know what I'm going to do." And so after that, he's lying to him, and now he's getting ready to go to battle. And the Philistine princes, they say, "No, I don't know about this." Now, I want to point this out, and then we'll move on. In verse number 5, we see this, I think, for the third time now. They said, "Is not this David of whom they sang one to another in dances, saying, Saul slew his thousands, and David his 10,000s? Now, this verse not only tells us about David's might in battle, but it also displays the people, the children of Israel's favor of David, their love of David, right? It shows those two things. And so the second portion of this scripture is found verses 6 through 11, and I have that titled, "Achish upon pressure dismisses David." So all of the other Philistine princes, they go to Achish, they say, "No, this guy can't go to battle with us. Are you crazy? We might be in the middle of the battle, and then he's going to turn on us." And I think that's exactly what David was planning. I said in the last video, I really don't know what David was planning, but after further contemplation and seeing David's reaction here, I think that's exactly what David was planning, and God prevented David from doing it because he had Achish completely fooled. And honestly, it's sad that how dishonest David was to Achish, and Achish was ready to make him his own personal bodyguard forever. I almost feel sorry for the guy in a way, but we see that there in verse number 6. But then verse number 8, we see that David protests when Achish says, "Look, David, you're going to have to go home. They won't let me bring you. You're just going home." And David said to Achish, "But what have I done? And what hast thou found in thy servant so long as I've been with thee unto this day, that I may not go and fight against the enemies of my lord the king?" He wants to go fight. I think this is what David's plan was. Now, this is purely McGrawology here because we have no basis for this, as far as I know. And that is, I think David was figuring to get out there with the Philistines, and they see him with the Philistines, and all of a sudden David turns and he fights the Philistines. He stabs them in the back, essentially, and fights against them. And I think in David's mind, he's thinking, this will win Saul over. This will show that I love him and I mean him no harm. This will prove that very point. That's my thoughts. I don't know how right that is, but David went and joined himself. He's lying, and now he's protesting, why won't you go let me fight? And I think there's two reasons why the Lord allowed the Philistines to protest, which wisely they did so, and Achish to send David home. The first one was, David's already a liar. He would have been a deceiving backstabber had he done that. I mean, that's just low down. That's like shooting a man in the back, right? That's just bad. Now, David would go on to do some wicked things, but this is something that would have stayed with him forever, and it would have always marred his kingdom. So I think that's one of the reasons why God did not allow this to happen. The second reason is found in the next chapter, in which we will go over tomorrow, because when David gets back to Ziklag, he figures out that, I believe it was, wasn't the Amorites maybe, I think, is who rose up against Ziklag there, and you're just going to see it was a bad situation. So I think those are the two reasons why God had David dismissed from that battle, because this is the battle to end all battles, right? What's happening in chapter 31, the Philistines and the Israelites are going to clash, and it's going to be the end of Saul's kingdom. So anyway, that's 1 Samuel chapter 29. It's right, wrong, or indifferent. This is what happened. David went to go fight. The Philistines protest, and Achish says you can't go, so David protests, and then he goes home. So that's 1 Samuel chapter 29. We're getting down. Got 2 more chapters to go. I hope you're up to date on your reading. And Lord willing, we will see you tomorrow.